All right, we're recording. My name is Leanne Ferguson, and I am the Executive Director of SGS, and I am thrilled and delighted to see all of those who have decided to join us today. We appreciate your time, and we hope that this will be a useful meeting. I'm going to go ahead and just read through some quick housekeeping tips just so that you guys kind of know what's going on today and what we're in for and how to use some of the different functions in the webinar. For those of you who have joined us that are not familiar with SGS, we're of course a regional organization that focuses on making sure to improve the way that we connect the bridges between gerontological research and applied practice. We're excited to be able to do this webinar because of course in conducting it we really hope to be able to increase and improve people's confidence and competence in delivering virtual presentations, as we understand it's so important to continue to disseminate these important components of research that you're working on, as well as best practices, especially now in these unprecedented times, but certainly as well as into the future. So here's some things that we want you to know about what we're doing in case you haven't been on one of our webinars. We are, of course, recording, as I mentioned before. When we're done recording, we will upload the video to our YouTube channel, and we'll share that on the SGS website resource page. So you'll be able to access that. And of course, this webinar is free for everybody. We're excited to have anybody who needs this information to get it. While we're in the webinar, we'll have the microphones muted just so we reduce distraction and lag. But there will be points in time where if you have a question, we'd be happy to address it with you either by way of audio, or you can use the Q&A pod, which you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A, and you can type your question in there and we'll be able to see that. You can identify yourself. Those can be anonymous questions, whichever you're comfortable with. But we'll take, intermittent pauses to look at the Q&A pod to see if there's anything that's come up that we should address. Some of you have already gotten very familiar with the chat pods, and we certainly encourage that. Use that throughout. We'll be monitoring that, making sure that we attend to any questions as they come up. You also have the opportunity to raise your hand on this, so you should be able to find a raise hand function. It'll just show us a little green hand by your name, and at that point we can open your microphone rights too, so that if you want to speak directly to either of the panelists or myself, to be able to do that too. And then, of course, during the presentation, we'll be presenting two different polls. The polls are really intended for two reasons. The first being that we would really like to get your feedback on some of the thoughts or questions that we have for you, but we also would like to make sure that you see how useful polls can be in engaging your audience in a webinar. So with that being said, I'd like to both thank and welcome our panelists and presenters today, Dr. Jen Kraft-Morgan and Celeste Green, and I'll let Jen Kraft-Morgan, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry we're not in Virginia having this wonderful chat, but I think this will help us get started with some of the virtual presentations that we all have begun to have to do even more, and will do into the summer and the fall. So Celeste and I volunteered to start the conversation on delivering virtual presentations. This is from Florida last year. Okay, so the purpose of the webinar today is to give you some tools and tips to be successful virtual presenters. We want to give you some information on what other support you might need to be successful in terms of lighting, audio, visual things. And give you a brief overview of the plan for SGS Webinar Wednesdays that we're going to be able to implement this summer, and answer any questions that you have about virtual presentation and have a dialogue. Today is meant to be pretty informal. We're going to have fun today. We need a little fun in our lives, I think. I do. And so we're going to, if you all know Celeste, we're going to do a little laughter today. So get ready. Okay, so I'm going to stop share and turn it over to Celeste.
Well, hey everybody, how are we today out there? You can say something, you can say it in the chat. Are you good? Are you stressed? You need to laugh? We are going to laugh. If we haven't met before, my name's Celeste Green. I have a company called Laugh Active, and I help people laugh on purpose because it feels good and it's good for us. So unfortunately, we can't see all your beautiful faces, but we want to encourage you to laugh along with or at us. No, definitely laughing along with us as we take ourselves through a few laughter exercises just to shake the stress away, all right? So let's start off by just shaking away the stress. So we're going to take our hands and just shake and laugh. Here we go. Blow out the lips.
It's always fun.
Take out your booty. And if you're sitting in a chair, which I advise if you want to stand, it feels good to get out of the chair. Shake it and laugh one more time.
Oh, Jennifer's.
Now say this with me. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha.
Oh.
Ha, ha, ha. Do it with me. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. And yay. Your body doesn't know the difference between laughing on purpose and laughing at a joke. So that's what we're doing. We're laughing on purpose. I want to encourage you to be playful with us as we're playful with you, and that's how you'll get the most out of our time together, all right? So this first one is called telephone laughter. I know you've been talking on the phone a lot to your loved ones. So we're going to pull out our telephone, and we're going to laugh at what we hear. We'll share our phones with others. They'll laugh at ours. We'll laugh at theirs. Telephone laughter. Ready, go. Say this with me. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Two more. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Last one. Ho, ho, and ha, ha, ha. And yay! Very nice. This is Zoom laughter. I've been spending a lot of time laughing on Zoom, and this is how you do it. So you take your hands and you cup them over your eyes, and you get real close and look at us as we look at you, and we will laugh together. Ready, go.
Oh, dear.
And say this with me. Very good. Very good. Yay. Let's do it again. Very good.
Very good. Yay.
We'll do a couple more. This one's called Laughter in My House. So yeah, it's inspired by laughing in my house. That's how I come up with these exercises. So what you do is you get inside your house. Get inside your house. Very good. Everybody out there, get inside your house. And it's a really windy day, and we're going to laugh inside our houses. Ready, go.
I'm so glad we're recording this.
Aren't you? And say this with me. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Two more. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Last one. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. And yay. All right, I got one more. This is appreciation laughter. We're just going to appreciate each other for everything, basically, for being healthier, happier, having fun together, making cool recordings. So what you do is you give a thumbs up, you give a high five, you give an elbow bump, all while laughing. All right, ready, go.
I like the elbow bumps. According to elbow bump.
And say this with me. Very good.
Very
good. Yay. Do it again like the cheerleader. in you. Very good.
Good.
Very good. Yay!
That's it. We're getting SGS cheerleader uniforms for Baltimore.
Woo! Pom-poms.
Better in Baltimore.
Baltimore.
All right. Thank you so much for doing something. Give yourself a laughing round of applause.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to take the helm back. I hope you all enjoyed watching us make fools out of ourselves for you. Okay.
Don't say we never gave you anything.
Yeah, really. Okay. All right. So, Celeste, do you want to talk a little bit about your business just for a second?
Yeah, this is just to say, so we're moving into unprecedented times. We're doing a lot more online. And so what you see here, and you'll get this presentation afterwards, is a link to my YouTube channel that has a lot of laugh along workouts and Zoom laughter yoga sessions, so that if you want to laugh along more often, you can watch those videos on YouTube. I also have an online laughter club that meets every Friday. It's at 11:30 Eastern, and it's free. And you can laugh with me for 20 minutes. It's a nice little laughter blast and a full cardiovascular workout just from laughing. So if you haven't been able to go to the gym, get your laughter workout. And then lastly is my website, Laugh Active. This is a training program for individuals who facilitate laughter exercise with elders, and you can check that out as well. So just some little resources to keep you laughing well beyond this webinar.
Excellent. And this wasn't just a shameless plug for Celeste's wonderful work. It also is an illustration of the kinds of engagement activities you can have online, which is awesome. There we go. Okay. So one of the big lessons when we're creating webinars, when we're creating interactive virtual presentations, is to really try to make it as interactive as possible, because our attention spans face-to-face don't last very long, but they last even shorter amount of time when we're virtual. So the messaging really needs to be honed. The purpose for the presentation has to be clear. It's useful to make it personal and interesting. It's useful to embarrass yourself laughing on virtually, so that it's interesting. Make it as interactive as possible, and we'll show you some. Celeste is the laughter queen, so I'm not sure that every one of us will want to do things like that. But making interactive in terms of polls and chats and pauses is really important to keep your audience engaged, and try to take it in as bite-sized chunks. So often as academics, we get away with talking for 15 minutes straight without any sort of transitions. And while that's not good practice at all, we can get away with it in a conference, in a face-to-face interaction, but it's much harder to do online and not advisable. So really focus down on what's the main purpose of the presentation. You're not going to be able to cover an entire paper in a presentation online, especially something that's shorter in the 10 to 15 minute range. Draw people in by talking about what's unique about your perspective, what's new about what you're learning, what's your point of view, to try to help people engage with the material. And it's really useful to provide an overview of the talk so that people can remember where you're going and keep track of where you are. We all have more distractions at home than at the office, and so it's helpful to keep people engaged by having a plan. I'm going to turn it back over to Celeste to talk about visual interest.
Using visual interest is important in face-to-face presentations, but even more so arguably online. And there's some really great resources out there for incredible free visuals. Just because you need to use visuals doesn't mean you have to use stocky cutouts or anything. I mean, you can find stunning artwork on a website called Unsplash, and it's all absolutely free. So these photographers upload the artwork. You can credit or not, whatever you want to do, and really say it with visuals. One of the things that I like to do with the visuals on my presentations is to take each bullet and have one bullet per slide, showing where the main point is conveyed with the visuals. And what I find is that people can pay attention to the particular point that you're trying to make, because they're not overwhelmed by a lot of different bullet points. And then also you're creating a feeling with the imagery that they can tie a memory to. So much of our connection to material is emotional, and good visuals can create that emotional effects, and they're free. So woohoo! I like free. So thank you.
Great. So we're going to have you use one of these interactive features of the webinar. So use the chat function and tell us what makes you dread listening to presentations online as audience members. So that go to the chat feature. I don't think I can see chat while I'm on here, can I? Yeah, I can pull it up.
Can you see him?
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay, great.
Boring tone of voice, yes. Feeling disconnected from presenter and audience. Sitting, yes. When there are too many words or monotone voice or font. Being inactive in front of the computer, multiple interruptions. Inability to ask timely questions. Too much text on the slide to read easily. Speaker's drones on. Not interesting, too much talking, head, not enough interaction. So all of the things that we were just talking about in terms of needing interaction, needing engagement, needing to feel connected, the laughter exercise and other ways of opening up the chat function and allowing people who have, you all are teachers, are all experts or practice experts, and you have really important things to say. And webinar isn't something that's easy to get that information out. But doing the chat function like this, you can get some information from your audience, which makes things all the more richer. Okay. All right. So speaking strategies. So one of the things that's most important when you're doing virtual presentations is to pace yourself. My first ever webinar, I did it over a conference call system in a room by myself, and there were no people. And because there were 20 seats unoccupied, it was even weirder. And it was sort of this weird audio system. And I felt myself rushing through the entire thing because I didn't have any feedback from the audience, and I just wanted to get it over with. And so it's important to breathe, to pace yourself, to put little reminders, to script pauses, to have the ability to stop for questions, let the moderator give you a break by reading the questions. One of the things that I find really useful, I hate, but I find really useful, is to record your own voice and listen to it. So record your presentation. You figure out all of the things that you do that are really annoying to the audience in terms of speech stallers, whether you're a person that says or ah, or whether you say okay too many times, or does that make sense too many times. That's my thing. Your talking speed, so you'll have a good sense of whether people are really taking in your message or not, whether you're bulldozing through it, and what corrections you need to make. So it's a really good idea to record your presentation and to listen to it so that you can be the audience member judging whether or not it works. It also works to have more than one speaker because you change visuals and you change cues, and it's an opportunity to make the audience re-engage with the content. So Your second interactive thing is a poll. And Leanne is going to launch this poll. And you're going to tell us, you can check all that apply. What are your biggest fears about speaking virtually? You give a second to submit that. And once we've got them all, it'll pop up with the results.
Hey, everybody voted? Let's see what we found.
Not having feedback from the audience to guide me. Technology problems is number one. I had a webinar not that long ago for SGS where my whole webinar crashed. My computer crashed and restarted in the middle of the webinar. We survived it. Leanne took over and we all made it work. Broadcasting my image via video. Yeah. Interruptions from others at home is a whole new level right now. 6 people in my house that walk behind me all the time. Excellent. That's very useful. Thank you. All right. I'm going to turn it back over to Celeste to talk about audiovisual strategies.
All right. So I am a little interested in audio and visual equipment. So I want to share some resources with you that I think that you'll find are very helpful in lighting your scene and giving your participants the best possible audio. One of the things that I find most annoying about any presentation is if there's bad audio, firstly, and then secondly, bad lighting. So, and these things are really easy to fix and make yourself look, you know, your best while giving that presentation. Your viewers want to connect with you as a person. And so by helping them see you in your best light, no pun intended, and hear you clearly, it makes a huge difference in your ability to connect with them. So you always want to start with what you have. So I've taken a picture here. This is a picture of my office, and you'll see I do have a professional lighting setup, but I've put my desk in the corner with windows facing me at 45-degree angles. And what that does is provide a natural lighting, helping to light up my face. And it's really, and plus I get a good view. So not all rooms have windows, I get that, but if you do have windows, use them to the best of your ability. Online is not going away, so present yourself, as I said earlier, in the best light. You can switch to the next slide, Jen. So if you do want to upgrade your lighting, if you don't have good natural light available in your house, it's something that's really easy to do. So I'm lit right now. Don't I look great? But I'm gonna pull one of my lights off the stand. And this right here, I don't want to blind you. Let me turn it off. But this right here, I have 2 of these, and they're at 45-degree angles. Now you'll see I get good light in here even with taking the light off, but it just gives you a little bit of an extra pop. And these lights were very inexpensive, and you just use a little battery pack in the back, and they're battery powered, and they last the whole webinar, and they're super easy to set up, very lightweight. And what you want to do is you can do 3-point lighting if you're really glamorous. I do 3-point lighting, but you can get by with just 2 lights at 45-degree angles. But if you have a 3rd light, you can put that 3rd light right in front of you. You want to light your subject first, not the room. So light up yourself. And you want to put your lights just a little bit above eye level. I stand when I present. I'm standing right now. But, you know, so my lights are a little bit higher, and that just gives you a little twinkle in your eyes, because why not? And I've linked to some of the equipment that I use, and you can see the lights that I use. I also really love these super cheap, this is a little clip light. It's like $13. This is what I'm using to light my face right now. And it's just, you can stick it in your pocket, take it with you. I see a hand raising.
There was just a question, any lighting tips for those of us with glasses? I always notice reflection from the screen.
Yeah, it is a problem with glasses. And one thing that I can recommend is the lights that I've chosen actually are a lot softer, and they have a built-in diffuser. So you can actually change the intensity of the lights. And so if you cool down the intensity, your glasses aren't as reflective. The worst thing that you can do if you have glasses is to buy this lighting kit called the ring light. It's like a ring and it lights, and that's why they call it the ring light. And the worst thing that you can do is buy one of those lights, because what actually reflects in your glasses are these two little rings that make you look like some like cyborg. So you don't want to buy that lighting. You want something a little more diffuse. But I oftentimes don't wear glasses in my presentations for that reason. I do wear glasses when I'm, out and about running errands, but when I present, I actually take my glasses off so that I don't get that reflection.
Somebody else also says that maybe getting a non-glare lens is useful for that problem.
That's a good idea. And then I wanted to talk about, I am fortunate. I have a dedicated office space at my home, so I am coming at it from that perspective. But if you are in a position where you have that dedicated space as well, I actually leave my lights set up so that when I'm ready to record a presentation or a YouTube video or whatever content I'm working on that day, it's just a matter of simply walking in here, turning on the lights. I charge them after my last use, so I charge them. That way when I come back in, they're fully charged, ready to go. I just flick them on and then get started, and it really couldn't be easier. And there's just no reason for all of us not to have, this type of setup if you are interested in it. Any other questions? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about audio. Jen mentioned earlier being conversational. It's definitely important to be conversational. Oftentimes you may be reading a script, but to try to read the script in a conversational way, sometimes it is good to have those ums and ahs because it seems natural. And you want to be natural with the people that are listening to you. You want them to be able to connect with you. So of course, conversational language, and then a clean start and stop. So this is primarily if you're recording over a PowerPoint, like you're making a PowerPoint video, maybe for one of your classes, one of your lectures, when I record those, I give at least a 1-second pause at the beginning of each slide and at the end of each slide, just in case if I have to go into my editing software and do any clips, I've got a little extra room for that clip. And it also gives your audience a chance to absorb the content that you've just put forth on the slide. For audio equipment, I'll show you what I use. I'm not using it right now because I'm just showing you, but this is called a Blue Yeti microphone. And if you find that you're recording a lot of lectures, it might make sense to invest in one of these. Or I know at our school, Georgia State University, they have a Center for Instructional Design that has this exact equipment. So you can go and use it, to record your content. I'm not going to go into details of the settings that you have for it, but this Blue Yeti microphone is great. I didn't include it in my videography kit because it's more of an audio, but if you typed in this in Amazon Blue Yeti or talk to your Center for Instructional Design, they would know what you're talking about. I like to record in the Blue Yeti with headphones so that I can hear the audio that's coming through, and I know that I'm getting good, clean audio. So for instance, if I'm recording and I've got my headphones on, I'm hearing what's coming through the recording. And did you have a question, Jen?
Yeah, there was another question about camera position and type of camera.
Yeah, so in terms of camera position, I don't necessarily know what you mean by that. Maybe you'll go into a little more detail in the chat. But essentially, I just put the camera right in front of me at eye level so that I can connect with my audience. The worst position for your camera is shooting from below, because that is a very unflattering. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, you know, this little neck area, I mean, with the lighting, it won't matter. but I don't want my neck to be the most prominent feature of the video. I want to look head on with my audience, or have it just a little bit higher. In terms of the actual camera, what I use is I use my iPhone. I do have a professional camera, but most of my shoots are just on the iPhone. It's already color corrected, it's easy and simple. So I have, and you'll see in my kit, a holder that holds my phone behind my computer. And so I just talk into my phone. And they say that you should never do this, that you should always shoot with your front-facing camera because it's higher quality, but I actually don't follow that rule. I put my phone up there so that I can see myself, and it's a little bit awkward at first, but once you get used to it, you just talk to yourself and look at yourself and just imagine that you're connecting with your audience member and helping them with whatever they're struggling with. And so I usually just don't complicate it and just use the iPhone set up right in front of me if I'm a few feet away from my webcam right now. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, she said she got it. Great.
Yeah. And then it's hard with interruptions with family members. You know, when I'm going to do some recording, I only have one family member, but I let my family member know, hey, I'm going in here, I'm going to record this presentation, so that she knows now's certainly not the ideal time to, you know, turn on the Vitamix full blast, or, you know, have a dance party in the living room. None of that, that's not the time. That's not the time. So letting the family members know, hey, I'm going to be in my office. Please try to keep it quiet. For a couple hours, I'll be in there with the door closed. But also cutting out those interruptions from the outside if you can. So I turn my phone on airplane mode when I'm recording, because what is really annoying is you're in the middle of a great recording, and then out of nowhere, your phone rings, and then you've just, you know, you're off your game. And also then you have the phone ringing in your recording, and you don't want that. So just placing that on airplane mode. And then also, this is just one final thing to do before you start recording video, is to always clean off the lens on your phone. You know, these things do get dirty. You don't want to get through your whole recording and then realize you got some blurry mess. So, any other questions out there?
Dan, do you see other questions on there? I don't see anything else. Nope, we're good. Oh, somebody just. Nope. Okay. All right. All right. So the Gerontology Education Committee, one of the new SGS committees, met yesterday and came up with Webinar Wednesdays. So we're going to be doing Webinar Wednesdays, probably June 17th through August 5th, although we're tentatively marking out those dates. As SGS presenters, anybody who was accepted to the conference was asked if they were interested in participating in webinars or electronic poster presentations, and we got a really good number of people interested in doing those webinars. So we're going to give that opportunity. Right now, we're planning for 2 or 3 speakers per session, grouped based on hopefully the theme or the conference domain. We're going to give webinar speakers 15 to 20 minutes, which will include questions and polls so that we can have some interactive time there for each speaker when we do the webinars. The SGS Gerontology Education co-chairs, myself, Adrienne Cohen, and Tim Marie Williams will be reaching out to people to schedule sessions. If we have such a wonderful time and it works, and maybe if we're still inside all the time in the fall, we might reprise this, but hopefully we won't be inside all the time in the fall. And then we did decide, based on the survey feedback, not to invest in CEUs for this series. There just wasn't enough of the same kind of CEUs needed to justify the expense. So we're really excited to do this. We're really excited to connect speakers with all of you and have this Webinar Wednesdays. Thanks to Cynthia Hancock for coming up with the alliteration. All right. So poll number 3, in case you were getting bored, what questions do you have for our speakers? Use the Q&A function in your webinar. We need the Jeopardy theme song.
For some reason, I think that this video is going to come back to haunt us one day.
Oh, probably. I'm sure people have. I know that Celeste got some dancing footage from the last SGS that I don't ever want to happen to end up on the webinar.
Adrienne asked how to set up polls, and is that a feature that only the host has? I can address that. I think primarily it depends on what type of webinar software that you're working with. I've used a couple of different styles of webinar software, and each of them are different. So when we set up this poll, we literally have to go into where we constructed the actual webinar, and in it, it allows us to develop our poll questions. So while it could be done on the fly, it is much better to think about your polls well in advance of the webinar. And then, of course, making sure that those functions will work. Most webinars will allow you to launch what's called a practice window prior to broadcasting. So when you're getting yourself prepared and you have your panelists, I would suggest always inviting them to join you in the practice webinar about 30 minutes prior to broadcasting so that you can run through the slides, answer any additional questions they may have about the functions, and then also test the polls. So you can literally launch the polls, click through the options to see if they're working, share the results, and then there is always a little bit of a hiccup in resetting the poll to be ready for when you broadcast, but it's really not difficult. It just takes 1 or 2 tries, and most people will figure it out pretty easily. Most poll functions will typically give you the option to have a single yes/no question, or all of the above, sort of a multiple choice or multiple indicator type of question. And again, based on what type of software you're using, most of them are powered by Zoom, so there's some similars. You know, they're pretty similar to one another, but that's in essence it. And I am always happy to walk through that backdoor process if anybody would like to see how that gets set up. I would be very happy to show you the administrative side to this, and how even in your invitation to participate in this, you saw that we had some hiccups with the fact that we couldn't remove questions that were built into some other aspect of our Ring Central functions. And so, you know, I guess part of this is just knowing that we have some grace here with the fact that everybody's on unprecedented territory. And I would be happy to share that with you, Sonia. It would be my pleasure.
So,
did you see the question, Jen?
Yeah. Will this webinar be posted on our website? Absolutely. Probably to Leanne and my chagrin. Yes, it's being recorded now, and will be posted on the website. More details on Webinar Wednesdays. We just met as a committee yesterday to sort of finalize. I gave you as much detail as we know. We're going to be reaching out to presenters and developing the schedule. As soon as we have the schedule, we'll be sending that out through constant contact through SGS channels, so that you'll be able to know more about that and know which ones you're going to want to join. So they're going to be awesome.
And Mary Ellen McSweeneyfeld asked a real good question about the optimal number of slides in a presentation.
For academic presentations, my rule of thumb has always been 1 slide per minute. So if you have 15 minutes to talk, you don't have any more than 15 slides. Other people do that differently. We had, because we have the interaction, we have even less slides. So Celeste, do you have a thought on that?
Well, and I've, you know, my academic presentations are a little non-traditional, but what I find is my presentations, generally, if I do an hour-long presentation, I usually have about 150 slides. Reason being is I do 1 bullet point per slide, and I also don't have it as a bullet point. I have it just as written text with an image behind it or a colored background or what have you. That way the audience is only taking in 1 point. So from my perspective, and I think both Jen and I are just looking at it from 2 different angles, but from my perspective, I think you have as many slides as many points as you want to make in your presentation.
There's not one answer to almost every question. More than one answer to every question. Other questions? All right. Okay, so the third poll, would you attend more webinars on this topic? Do you feel like you have had a good introduction and you don't need any more, which is fine? Or do you think that there are other things that you want to dive deeper on that you'd like to learn on delivering virtual presentations? And then if you have ideas for topics, we'd love for you to mention them in the chat function so that we can best tailor our webinar content to your needs.
Still have some votes coming in. Okay, it looks like we have the majority of attendees voting. There's our results.
Yes, that's always. So some of you are fine and some of you want more. In the chat function, I learned a lot today, but I feel like once my webinar is scheduled, I'll think of more questions. So we can do booster sessions. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like to learn how to do a poll. Maybe have a recorded webinar that simply goes over the logistics of what presenters will need to know. Yeah, that's a good idea too. Those are great.
And one point that you make, Sean, you say when or if. I really feel like it's more of a matter of when. So this is a skill that we all need to learn, and we are in the grace period right now. But as time goes on, we definitely want to be able to show proficiency of doing presentations online.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of a long road ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may, I'll share some of the things that, you know, just from our perspective at SGS, when do we need to deal with Zoom bombing?
I can answer that too.
Please do.
The answer, in my opinion, is no. So I facilitate multiple free Zoom calls each week. I shared some of those with you at the very beginning. So I've got my information out there on the internet, and Zoom bombers could come in, and I could have a password, but I kind of find it annoying to have to enter in the password, and I'm still going to have to make the password public. So all that does is just add another layer of security for people coming into your webinar. So with Zoom and Zoom bombing, if somebody wants to Zoom bomb you, they're going to do it. But really what they're after is like public information. So my stuff, you know, they'd be like, oh, look at that laughter person. I'm going to go Zoom bomb that because I've got my information out in the public arena. You're not going to be Zoom bombed unless you've got your stuff out there. But secondly, Zoom is my conference or webinar software of choice. When I first log into Zoom, what I do is turn off the screen share feature so that I am the only person, because I'm the host, I'm the only person that can do a screen share. Because with the Zoom bombing, sometimes they'll share screens and put, offensive videos and imagery. And so if I'm the only person that can share a screen, I haven't been Zoom bombed yet. And I think the risk of being Zoom bombed is minimal. Even with my information being out in the public, and it's better to put yourself out there and risk being Zoom bombed than not put yourself out there and never get Zoom bombed, because the answer is no to 100 things that you don't do. I mean, just do it. Get out there.
And there is the function in Zoom, like, for example, if someone in this particular webinar got really unruly, I could kick you out. And I mean, I don't think that's something that we ever want to get into the best practices, but certainly if you have the etiquette established at the beginning of your webinar about how it is that you'd like, people to behave, and with maybe 1 or 2 repeated warnings, you simply hit the remove button and eliminate your issue. Now, can they come back in? Sure. And does it become a real big hassle to continuously remove them? Sure. But I can tell you, I don't think that happens very often. And I see a Sean saying that it's happening in classes, and I tend to agree that it's probably just more of a teen way of getting attention. I don't know that most professionals would conduct themselves that way, but
you can also do the admit it thing, so that if it becomes a problem, we can have a waiting room set up so that we can only admit people who, plus you have to register for these, so that helps.
Yeah, and that depends on how you want your webinar set up. So there's a lot of different options where you can make it available to everybody and not require registration. And I think that's when you do find yourself with maybe more of an issue, because you've extended invitation, you don't know who's on your attendee list, so anybody can show up. Whereas, this is easy for me because I've seen your registrations, your RSVPs, and that's in Jen's room. I'm like, who's behind me? See? But I think you can also set up so that you do have a password, as Celeste mentioned before, so that people will only be able to admit themselves into the room once they have a password. And those are things that they're tough calls. I think it's just, you have to have an audience or who your intended audience would be. But again, that administrative side of things, and I think Christy Jensen had mentioned wanting to have less of a webinar and more of maybe even a meeting about how to talk through setting up those types of things. And we are more than happy to make that happen.
Yeah, a webinar on handling hosting, and a meeting giving colleagues an opportunity to speak or interact. And there are some good functions of, you can develop rooms and things so that you can have breakout sessions, which I think is super useful.
In college classes, I just saw Sean write that that's happening in college classes, and that just makes my head shake. Bigger.
It is.
Wow.
It is. Yeah.
I think some of the other things that I was just thinking about while you all were speaking, and some of the questions that have come through, is what to do with your webinar when you're finished with it. And that's one of those things that tends to be a learning curve as well. So how do you convert it, say, to a video? And the Zoom meetings, including this one, will automatically, won't automatically, as long as you hit record. Once you finish the meeting, it will automatically convert the meeting into a number of different files. And the nice thing about the files is that you will get your file that will indicate your poll results. So if you can't scramble down and get your survey indications, your survey data, you can pull up the poll results afterwards. You can pull up the chat window text. So it saves the chat window text, so you can go back and perhaps revisit questions you may not have felt like you had time to answer or needed to address in addition. And same thing with the Q&A pod. And then, of course, it will give you a video recording with the ability to put that right up on YouTube. And I found that to be a pretty simple process. You simply just upload it to YouTube, and you don't have to worry about converting unless you want to go back and do some editing. And that gets into another situation, and I'm still learning a whole lot about that, more than I ever wanted to know. So that might be helpful a little bit. Is there any other questions about that process?
I had something that I wanted to mention about recording Zoom presentations. So I've been doing a lot of Zoom laughter engagements and recording them in Zoom, but I also actually have my phone on a tripod and stand behind my webcam. And so my phone is actually recording the video. And what I find is this video, if there's going to be a lot of the speaker talking, which in your presentations, the answer is yes, it's going to show the good video rather than Zoom's low quality video. And just with a few simple editing cuts in a basic editing program, you can take your you have your footage be the main footage, and then a little footage from Zoom where maybe if you want to show a poll, just cut that in to your main video so that you can give your participants the best audio experience through the phone.
That's great. All right.
Mary Ann Zielinski put a question in the chat pod or the Q&A pod about what about music if music is downloaded in a PowerPoint?
Celeste, do you have an answer?
I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
So in terms of audio quality, is that what she's asking? If the music, the audio quality is in the PowerPoint? The music will play if it's embedded in the PowerPoint. Yeah, the quality of the music. How do we? That could just be recorded off the Zoom, right?
Yeah, if you record the music through the Zoom, it's gonna sound okay, but it's not gonna sound great. But if you were taking some video using your phone and a microphone, you would get better audio quality. And Adrian asked, what kind of phone do I have? This is just an iPhone, but I love data. I just love data. So I have a bigger chip in here that can handle a lot of video because I know when I buy a phone, I'm using it for that purpose.
Right.
But even still, I mean, even on a lower data phone, you can still record the video, and then when you're finished, take it off your phone so that it's not taking up that storage.
And you can record a lot of these things right through your laptop webcams and through your teaching software. That's usually
And there's always the cloud storage options as well. So if for whatever reason the phone has a low memory, potentially at least having access to a cloud-based storage service will certainly take, because even on my laptop, then the sheer volume of files that I have that are video related do start to eat that up. Zoom does give you an option when you record to either record it on your laptop or record it on their cloud-based storage. And again, I think if some of you are considering purchasing a webinar-based software, those are features to really investigate to see if they have the options that you will need to best support you. And I will say, if you haven't all noticed this already, so many of the virtual providers now are stepping up their game in terms of how many participants you can have on your webinar, because the limit for most software is about 100 unless you buy up the bigger packages. But you want to know how many people will allow you to host, how many you'll be able to host each month, if that's part of your plan. Understanding where the storage would be, how long the storage is accessible for. We were trying to figure out how to do a virtual conference when our conference canceled. And one of the software providers would only allow us to host the content for up to 3 months after our conference, which for us just didn't make a lot of sense. So those are things, you don't even really sometimes know the questions you need to ask until you're in the middle of these demos. But taking a demo run through some of these webinar software supporters is really, really important.
Excellent. Well, we're running out of time. We timed that pretty close to an hour, which is wonderful. We just wanted to remind you all that we're having a virtual webinar-based award ceremony on the 21st of May. You're all invited from 1 to 2:30. we really hope to get a high attendance on this and to have a little bit of fun with our award winners since we weren't able to celebrate them in person. So please join us.
Any final questions or comments for our panelists or myself? Well, our panelists have been kind enough to give us their contact information, and I know both would be very happy to field any questions, as would I, and I'm always at the admin at southerntheologicalsociety.org. I wish we could all be in a room together. Certainly have missed you at the conference, but we're so grateful that you joined us today. And on behalf of all of us, I certainly wish you all safety, wellness, and happiness and balance in these weird times. And of course, let us know if there's anything that you would like us to see address specifically in future webinars. Always happy to hear about it. Thank you.
Be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.